to open the Hyderabad program of the International Higher Education Fair. First of all, I would like to give grateful thanks to Mr. Shanawaz Sheikh Parel for his vision and commitment to education, which he has generously expressed by his support to IHEF. All of us, we're really grateful for you.
Good morning to you all, my friends. I'm so happy to see here and becoming a part of this great event. I thank God to keeping me here. And also, I don't want to waste much of your time, so I can conclude my words to wishing all the success for this great event. Thank you so much.
Also, we would like to thank the staff of iCircle Expo and Alhambra US Chamber. And we have to thank the special speakers we have, who over the next 2 days, they will share their expertise and insights. But first and foremost, thank you all for attending. Each of you will individually and as a group contribute to the IHEF. Ultimately and hopefully, you will find your hearts and minds open to a brighter future for yourself and for the ones you love. Enjoy and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kristen. Good morning. My name is Audrey Townend. I'm an affiliate with Alhambra US Chamber, a partner organizer with iCircle Expo. We have over 10 countries represented here at the International Higher Education Fair. We have workshops for students. We have sessions for educators. Both of those workshops and sessions will be taking place in the HYTEX building next to us. In this conference space, we will have live panels with government officials, higher education editors, international representatives, and we also have booths with university representatives to speak on your questions about study abroad, networking, and most importantly, your opportunities in higher education abroad. It is my pleasure to get started this morning. We are introducing our first panel. It is called Transforming Education, Transforming Lives. Our moderator is Ms. Kimberly Kaur. She is a VIP program strategist with her company, MDG. We have Dr. Hassan Diab, the Vice President of Regional External Programs with American University in Beirut. We have Dr. Moudi Al-Khalif with the Saudi Shura Council and a former diplomat. We have Dr. R.K. Mishra, the Director of the Institute of Public Enterprise. And lastly, we have Dr. M.M. Ansari, a former member of the University Grants Commission. Welcome to the International Higher Education Fair. It is my pleasure to also introduce Ms. Ursula Cielesinska, the ambassador with the Polish Network of Women Entrepreneurs.
So there's a lot of talk today about transforming higher education from a traditional research-based organization into one that will produce students with the future-minded skills that are necessary for today's innovative workforce. Our objective with our time today is to share some of the thinking about how this transformation in higher education is taking shape and what results we are beginning to see with these changes. My name is Kimberly Kaur. I am a marketing strategist for a trade show and events firm in Washington, D.C. One of our primary clients is U.S. News, and they host a STEM conference every year, which is a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics conference. I'm also a graduate of Stanford University in California, and I studied abroad in France while I was at Stanford. I'll begin by introducing my fellow panelists. We'll move into some opening questions to you all and to the panel, and we'll have discussion for half the time prior to opening up the floor to questions. We'll complete with one final future-minded question, and we'll keep this all to an hour. So to begin with, Dr. Moudi Al-Khalaf holds a PhD in Applied Linguistics from Princess Nora University. She was appointed Assistant Attaché for Cultural and Social Affairs at the Royal Embassy of Saudi Arabia in Washington, D.C., and became the first Saudi woman to hold that senior diplomatic position, where she promoted positive cultural outreach by Saudi students residing in the United States. Throughout her career, Dr. Al-Khalaf has been an adamant advocate for women's rights in Saudi Arabia and is currently a member of the Saudi Shura Council, only the second time in history that Saudi Arabia has appointed a woman. Professor Hassan Diab is a professor of computer engineering at the American University of Beirut, as well as a vice president. From 2011 to 2014, Professor Diab was Minister of Education and Higher Education in Lebanon. His research interests include cryptography on high-performance computer systems, reconfigurable computing, and higher education reform. Professor M.M. Ansari is an economist and education specialist who has made significant contributions to growth of knowledge, particularly in the areas of human resources development, higher education, and research. He holds a PhD in economics of education and is currently advisor YES Global Institute, a think tank of the YES Bank. Professor Ansari was responsible for assisting the University Grants Commission in designing and implementing policies for promotion of higher education research, mainly through the mechanisms of funding and quality assurance. Welcome. And Professor R.K. Mishra. Dr. Mishra is a senior professor, director, and Oil and Natural Gas Corporation Subir Rahat Chair at the Institute of Public Enterprise and is a member of the UN Task Force on Standards of Excellence in Public Administration, Education, and Training. Professor Mishra is a graduate of the International Management Program at Bocconi University in Milan, Italy, and is now Vice President of the International Association of Schools and Institutes in Administration. His current interests include modernization of state, civil service systems, financial administration, environmental administration, privatization, SOE reforms, restructuring, poverty management, and good governance. Welcome. So we'll begin by asking, I'd like to see from the audience with a show of hands, how many of you all are currently students? Anybody currently a student? Okay, all right. So how many of you may have studied overseas? Have any of you studied overseas already? Okay, a couple, good. So we're trying to get an understanding of where our audience is from. So we'll begin with some opening questions to our panelists, and I encourage you all just to answer as you feel appropriate, and of course to interject where you find it appropriate as well. So in a statement we'll begin, the National Association of Software and Services Companies, the main trade group for India's outsourcing industry, said, the H-1B visa system exists specifically because the United States has a persistent shortage of high-skilled IT talent. And in fact, in 2014, the last year for which information is available, just 13 outsourcing firms accounted for a third of all granted visas. The top recipients were Tata Consultancy Services, Infosys, and Wipro, all based in India. With the H-1B visa system in line for reform in the United States, what are your schools and government entities doing now to prepare your students for careers in high-tech industries not in the United States? What are you doing to ensure a viable career path for your students? Who would like to begin? Dr. Mishra.
Thank you, Chair. And let me say the word of welcome to our panelists and also to the invitees. You know, I think this S-1B visa, I would say that it's good politics, but I think it's a bad economics. Also, I think at one time we thought, and I think still I think some countries in the world, they've been thinking that black people or people who are not white, they are the burden on the white people. And they think that by going against the free trade policy, I think they can take care of their own interest. Mm-hmm. And I think S-1B visa is one step in that direction. But I think there are reasons for that. One is the US is highly indebted. And I don't think that US can borrow any more. They can't live, I think, the current style of living, they can't, go ahead with that. So I think they had to come with that. Number two, I think US is vacating the place which it had for several years in its hand. At one time, they were known for R&D. But now I think saying that they will have S-1B visa controls, now I think they're giving it away to countries like India, countries like China, and many other countries, because they feel that they can't go on holding the position, the prime position in the field of R&D. Also, I think now they believe that the money that they were putting in innovations, they will not be able to put that much of money in innovations. Now, coming to the impact of that policy in India, I would say that in long term, we'll have no impact. In short term, we'll have some impact, but for the long term, India is preparing very, very well. Schools are preparing very, very well. One, now we are promoting startups. Startups and startups and startups everywhere, both at the central level, at the state level. Even I think at the level of the individual, I think. Now we have been thinking of having our own industry. So that's one. Number two, entrepreneurship. We are preparing our new generation for risk-taking. And India is a big country. We have our own internal market, which is quite big. So that's the second thing. Number three is that we're technologizing our business, small to big. Everywhere we want to bring in IT in a big way, because we now are aware of the belief that we can simplify the processes, both at the government level, then at the level of private sector. And we'll require a lot of IT in that. And what has happened is that if you take the budget for the current year of the central government and many state governments, you'll see that they have provided 3 to 4 times the money that they have been providing for the application of IT in their businesses or in the government work. So we are creating a big market, internally to take care of the impact which would be caused because of the H-1B visa policy. Then, you have public enterprises, which are very, very large public enterprises. These public enterprises, they're bringing in IT in a very, very, big way there. Not only that, we are also changing our education policy. In our education policy at the undergraduate level itself, we are bringing a big element of IT. So we have started giving degrees like BCA, we have started giving like MCA, and to get on the place which US is vacating in terms of R&D, in terms of innovations, we also are promoting high quality research in the field of computers. So in all, I would say that yes, policies, they go on changing, and if there is an action in the US, there is a reaction in India. But the reaction of India is not violent. Indian reaction is very, very positive, because we believe that each country has its right, I think, to formulate its own policy. One. Number two, to formulate a policy which can protect its own interests. So if the US thinks that by curbing H-1B visa, they take care of their own people, I think there's nothing wrong in that. To that extent, now, India has been readjusting its economic, social, and political policies. And I think India and US, they'll continue to have, the dialogue that we have, that dialogue will not be affected by that. I'm very sure that there's only one thing, we'll keep it aside and we'll keep on moving. I would also say that only 15 firms in India, they take, about 80 to 85% of H-1B visa. And in that, we have, TCS, we also have Wipro, we have Infosys. Now, if you take TCS, now TCS is just not a company. It is a part of a very, very big and huge group. It has its own reserves. It has its own businesses. So they have followed the policy of diversification. And if there is some imbalance here, I'm sure that they'll balance it or all, I think.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other thoughts?
Well, I must add to 2 points what Professor Misra has already said, and he has put the perspective very effectively. I think if you confine only to the H-1 visa, it is going to affect in 2 ways. One, it is not only the Indian companies which are hiring and taking engineers to the US, but there are a large number of foreign companies, including those coming from the US. They hire the services of the engineers and they provide them the practical trainings, and then they take them elsewhere. So the first aspect would be the remittances, of course, may be affected. The cost effectiveness of the services will be affected. So that is one part which is likely to affect both the countries, both the US, because the US may or may not get the all the time very competent engineers locally, because they are already absorbed elsewhere. So the competent engineers who could have been inducted from India, they may not be available because of the higher wages that they have to pay, and that will affect the profitability of the companies. So that is one aspect of cost effectiveness that will affect both Indian companies as well as the US and other companies, rather all the MNCs which are hiring the services of engineers. The other aspect that you talked about, that is about the preparedness. You know, we already have been focusing on quality assurance, quality improvement, because it has been proved by some of the studies that at least as many as 70 to 75% of the engineers produced here are not employable in the MNCs, and the government and the institutions are very cautious of it, and every effort is being made to improve the quality of education. So as far as the quality of education is concerned, that is being looked after both the Indian institutions and many of those students who go abroad for quality education, that is also taken care of it. So as far as the quality education is concerned, both the domestic as well as the international institutions are concerned, they will keep on trying to improve upon the quality and produce the quality engineers. But ultimately, the kind of politics behind it, as Professor Mishra pointed out, that is likely to affect the economies, and the economies which are very effectively integrated, both developing and the developed world. So that aspect, that is the aspect of economics of, you know, the immigrants, that is to be looked into, and that is likely to affect both the home country as well as the countries where from these engineers are available. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you both. In many parts of the world, women have not been afforded the opportunity to study at the same level as their male counterparts. Dr. Akalov, can you describe one example of a program you have seen that is succeeding in its mission to educate women equally to men? And would you also tell us the one thing you'd like to see all higher education institutes enact to provide equity for women?
Okay. I would safely say that the first answer that comes to mind would be the King Abdullah Scholarship Program, which is the largest government-funded scholarship program in the world. It started in 2005. It's still going on under King Salman's reign. And currently we have over 300,000 students worldwide studying. That's not including the ones that have already graduated. Now, going back to women, this scholarship program is open to men and women equally from Saudi Arabia, but my government has gone one step further, which is trying to tackle some of the cultural/religious obstacles that may face women studying abroad. Families that are reluctant to send their daughters to study abroad. So the program has provided an extra scholarship with every female that goes abroad for a male to go with her. And that has encouraged a lot of families to send their daughters abroad and to get their sons also educated by the scholarship program. So I think that's a fascinating step that the government took to ensure not only equal opportunity, but to give that extra nudge to women. And the second part was?
What changes that you'd like to see all higher education institutes enact that women have equity?
In Saudi Arabia, I can safely say that as far as quantity goes, 54% of higher education is female, which is good. But not all fields are open to women. Not all fields are open. I was just discussing with my husband that we don't have engineers, for example. We just started that. So I would like to see around the world equal opportunity in all fields, starting by educating young girls that every field is open to them, and there's nothing such as gender-based specializations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like you said, that's an issue in the United States too, where girls are maybe seen from an earlier age to say, well, that's something boys do, not girls. And so I agree, it maybe starts much earlier. Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, well, I personally strongly believe in women empowerment, and I can recall back in 1986 when we started the Computer and Communications Engineering program back at the American University of Beirut, around 70% of the class were women.
Oh, wow.
It was very unusual. Actually, the percentage now is less, but that's what we started out with. And as my colleague mentioned, the same in Lebanon. The majority of students in higher education are women, I think 52%. And the majority of students at the American University of Beirut, which I represent, is also women, 51%. You'll be, I don't think you'll be surprised to know that 70% plus of students that graduate with distinction or high distinction are women as well at AUB. So in Lebanon, I think we most people strongly believe in empowering women from the education onwards, higher education, and of course, place at work, but we're still way away from empowering women in our political system and in the parliament as well as in the government. But I'm particularly interested in talking a bit about one aspect of this panel, which is transforming lives. And I believe higher education, the aim of all higher education institutions should be nothing less than transforming lives of graduates, because these graduates, wherever they are, whatever societies, whatever countries, should be the agents of change for the future. And I personally believe that the best higher education model is the liberal arts higher education model, because it not only strengthens or equips students in the area of specialization, but also in what is badly needed these days in all the surveys done in the States as well as in the region, and that is soft skills. So typically in let's say a bachelor degree in computer science, which is 90 credits from sophomore onwards, a third of those credits would be general education, which is soft skills, which has to do with com skills, sociology, humanities, languages, what have you. And that students don't realize how important this is for the success of future graduates, and which is evident in a lot of the surveys that are carried out. I just came from the Emirates, and there was such a survey done in the UAE that is similar to the results done in the States in major companies, which is the major weaknesses of graduates joining big companies is not the know-how and the subject matter, whatever the specialization, but rather the soft skills that are vital for the success of. Students should know how to analyze, synthesize. The program should promote creativity, entrepreneurship, and also something that we badly need, not just in the region, but across the world, and that is tolerance and accepting the others in terms of interreligious and intercultural differences. And that is something, in my opinion, vital and part of what they would be introduced to in the general education component in any higher education institution that is implementing the liberal arts higher education model.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
may I briefly provide some Indian perspective, because it is increasingly realized in India that any family which has an educated mother is not the poor family. And therefore, one of the ways to solve the problem of poverty, illiteracy, is to educate women, and therefore the equalization of opportunities have been systematically pursued. And what we see is that in case of higher education, more than 42% of the enrollment is women participation, and though they are slightly lagging behind, but they are closer. But when we look at the enrollment at the elementary level, now we see almost 100% of the girls students are participating, especially in the rural areas, especially from the poor families. So we can expect that in the next 10 to 12 years or so, there is going to be almost 50% participation in higher education. And recently, I must add that the IITs have taken a decision that they are going to provide reservation to the extent of 1/3 of the enrollment. And therefore, I consider that the women participation and the gender equality is being systematically pursued. While it has taken time because of the, prolonged poverty, illiteracy, but and when it is taken care of, the equality will be assured. And particularly, there are a number of schemes of the UGC and the AICT and the DST which encourages participation of women, especially in the science and technology education. And at the same time, some of the state governments are providing free education until they complete the postgraduate education. So therefore, efforts are being made to equalize opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add?
Sure, of course.
So I think only what I think India believes in the philosophy, what has been propounded by Malala, our Nobel laureate, who got the Peace Prize. And I think what Malala has been speaking here and there, I think every country has to follow. And in India, we are going to follow it much more rigorously, as Professor Ansari was just mentioning. Not that we have made reservation compulsory, they are very bright.
Right.
They are coming because they are very bright, they are hardworking, and I think that's very good for the country, because if India is growing at 7.5% today, if India is leading the world, it's leading because men and women, they are working together. And also because of urbanization. Now, you know, people living in rural areas, you know, you see numbers are decreasing. But when you come to urban areas, then what happens is that you have that awareness that I must do it. And you'll find, I think, not only I go in IAS boards also, we select, you know, topmost civil servants. And there we keep in mind that we have that ratio of at least 30%. If they are very bright, they must be taken, I think. And we have felt one thing, that women has gone everywhere. They have gone in medicine, they have gone in engineering, they have gone in management. Right. Only one area where they have not gone is politics, because they feel that politics is polluted. Therefore, they want to keep themselves away from politics. But all told, I think there are so many programs, and I'm sure that if India has to grow, and if India aspires to grow, it just can't leave the women behind. I think they will go. They are going to lead us. And I am there also because of my senior board member, Mahapar Aliji, who recommended me there. So you can understand, you know, how women, you know, they have been even thinking of men in this country. Yeah? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So to the panel, my parents had a phrase, and the phrase was, give your child roots and wings, meaning give them a solid foundation and a place to be safe and grow, but also give them the skills they need to lead, explore, and create a life for themselves. What are your organizations doing for students today to provide them with the traditionally solid research, study, and foundational knowledge that we talked about,